In a galaxy where alien civilizations measure honor through scars earned in battle, where the Korthak Empire displays their victories as raised welts across their chitinous shells, and where the ethereal Vexani etch their achievements into their very bones, humans were dismissed as weak, no battle scars. No honor marks, no proof of their worth. They couldn't have been more wrong. What they mistook for weakness was actually humanity's greatest strength, the ability to carry their battles not on their skin, but in their hearts. And sometimes, just sometimes, those battles were honored in ink. When Commander Sarah Reaper Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle onto the Galactic Council's most prestigious military station, every alien eye saw only a small human female with colorful markings on her arms. They saw decoration, art, vanity. They didn't see the memorial. They didn't know that each piece of ink told the story of someone who didn't make it home. They didn't understand that in human culture, some honors run deeper than scars. But they were about to learn. The Galactic Defense Station Harmony Prime had seen its share of impressive arrivals. Korthak war chiefs had stomped through its corridors with battle scars gleaming like medals across their armored hides. Vexani honor guards had glided past with bone-deep etchings that told stories of conquered worlds. Even the hulking granite folk had thundered through with stone-carved victories marking their massive frames. But none of them had prepared the station's inhabitants for the quiet arrival of Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez. She stepped off the Earth transport shuttle with the practiced ease of someone who had made similar arrivals dozens of times before. Her uniform was crisp, regulation perfect, but it was what lay beneath the rolled sleeves that immediately drew attention. Her arms were covered in intricate artwork, flowing designs that seemed to dance across her skin in vibrant colors that most alien species couldn't even perceive properly. "Look at that," chittered Advisor Click-Tack, his mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his people. "The humans send us a decorated soldier, but she decorates herself instead of earning proper battle marks." The Korthak delegation found this particularly amusing. Their leader, War Chief Brutax, displayed his own achievements proudly, raised scars from personal combat, each one telling a story of victory. The largest ran from his left shoulder to his right hip, a souvenir from single combat with a rebel leader on Theta Proxima. By Korthak standards, he was a living legend. "Humans and their vanity," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "They paint pictures on their skin because they have no real victories to show." The Vexani representative, High Mystic Zalana, observed the human with her large luminous eyes, but said nothing. Her own people carved their accomplishments into their very bones, creating a network of sacred etchings that could be read like a biography by those who knew the ancient script. The human's ink was colorful and elaborate, but to Vexani sensibilities, it seemed frivolous. Sarah Martinez heard none of this commentary as she approached the reception desk. Her focus was on the mission briefing she'd received during the 3-day journey from Earth. Harmony Prime was hosting the first joint military training exercise between human forces and the 3 major galactic powers. It was a chance to prove that humanity deserved a seat at the table, that despite being relative newcomers to the galactic community, they had something valuable to contribute. The exercise would be simple enough on paper. Mixed teams would be given a series of tactical challenges to complete. The real test would be whether species that had been fighting each other for centuries could work together when faced with a common threat. "Commander Martinez?" The voice belonged to Station Administrator Veltar, a tall, thin being whose species Sarah couldn't immediately place. His translator rendered his words in crisp, formal English. "Welcome to Harmony Prime. I trust your journey was comfortable?" "Thank you, Administrator. The journey was fine." Sarah's voice carried the confidence that came from years of military service, but there was something else there too. A weight that suggested she'd seen more than her share of difficult missions. "Excellent. Your quarters have been prepared in Section 7 alongside the other team leaders. The joint briefing begins at 0800 station time tomorrow. I trust that gives you sufficient time to rest and review the mission parameters." "More than sufficient, sir." Sarah accepted the datapad containing her quarters assignment and mission details. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of the alien delegations watching her with poorly concealed amusement. She'd seen that look before, on dozens of worlds, in countless briefing rooms, whenever she was the first human in the room. The assumption was always the same. Humans were soft, inexperienced, more concerned with appearance than substance. It was an assumption that had gotten a lot of aliens into trouble over the years. Sarah's quarters were spartanly furnished but comfortable. She unpacked her gear with the efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times, each item placed with military precision. When she came to her dress uniform, she paused for a moment, running her fingers over the ribbons and medals adorning the chest. Each one told a story, but not the kind of story her ink told. The comm unit chimed softly, indicating an incoming message. Sarah activated it to find a familiar face staring back at her from the screen. "Sarah, how's the fancy alien space station treating you?" The voice belonged to Master Chief Petty Officer Jackson Jazz Morrison, her former teammate and current friend. Behind him, she could see the familiar surroundings of Naval Special Warfare Group 2's headquarters back on Earth. "About what you'd expect, Jazz. Lots of impressed stares at the walking art gallery." Sarah gestured to her arms with a wry smile. Jazz's expression sobered slightly. "They giving you any grief about the ink?" "Nothing I can't handle. Besides, they don't know what they're looking at." "Damn right they don't." Jazz leaned forward, his weathered face filling more of the screen. "You remember what Chief Kowalski used to say about first impressions?" Sarah smiled at the memory. "Let them underestimate you. It makes the victory sweeter." "That's my girl. Show these aliens what humanity is really made of." "And Sarah?" Jazz paused, his expression becoming serious. "Make them count." After the call ended, Sarah stood before the mirror in her quarters, looking at her reflection. The ink covering her arms wasn't just decoration, despite what the aliens believed. Each piece was a memorial, a promise, a reminder of what she fought for. The eagle perched on her right shoulder wasn't just artwork. It represented her fallen squad leader, Lieutenant Dave Eagle Thompson, who had died holding a position on Kepler 442b so the rest of his team could escape. The compass rose on her left forearm wasn't a decoration. It was a tribute to navigation specialist Maria Santos, who had guided their ship through an asteroid field with a failing nav system, saving 200 souls before the reactor breach claimed her. Every piece of ink on Sarah's arms told the story of someone who hadn't made it home. In human military culture, it was one of the highest honors you could give or receive. To be remembered in someone's skin meant your sacrifice would never be forgotten. That someone would carry your memory into every battle that came after. The aliens saw vanity where humans saw devotion. They saw decoration where humans saw dedication. They saw weakness where humans saw strength. Tomorrow's exercise would be their first chance to learn the difference. Sarah's evening was interrupted by a soft chime from her door. She opened it to find a young ensign standing in the corridor, his uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's Space Navy. "Commander Martinez, Ensign Parker, ma'am. I wanted to introduce myself before tomorrow's exercise. I'll be serving as your communications specialist." Sarah studied the young man's face. Fresh out of the academy, probably his first assignment off-world. His nervousness was obvious, but there was something else there too. Determination. "Come in, Ensign. Have you had a chance to review the mission briefings?"
"Yes, ma'am."
Multiple times. Parker stepped into her quarters, his eyes inevitably drawn to her arms. Unlike the aliens, however, his expression wasn't one of amusement. It was one of recognition. "My brother served with the 3rd Marines on Tau Ceti," he said quietly. He didn't make it back, but his squad leader got his initials tattooed on her wrist. Said it meant he'd be with them for every mission after. Sarah nodded slowly. "That's the idea, Ensign. We carry our fallen forward with us." "The aliens don't understand that, do they?" "No," Sarah said, looking out the viewport at the stars beyond. "But they will." The next morning dawned with the artificial sunrise that marked the beginning of the station's day cycle. Sarah had been awake for an hour already, completing her daily routine of physical training and meditation. It was a ritual she'd maintained throughout her military career, a way of centering herself before whatever challenges the day might bring. The joint briefing was scheduled to take place in Conference Room Alpha, the station's largest meeting space. As Sarah made her way through the corridors, she noticed the looks from passing aliens. Word had apparently spread about the decorated human officer, and curiosity was running high. She arrived at the briefing room to find the other team leaders already assembled. War Chief Brutax dominated one side of the table, his massive frame making the station's furniture look like toys. High Mystic Zalana sat in graceful silence, her ethereal features giving away nothing of her thoughts. The 3rd team leader was someone Sarah hadn't met yet. Colonel Rextar of the Siege Guard, whose people were known for their defensive capabilities. "Ah, Commander Martinez." Administrator Veltar entered the room carrying a datapad and projector. "Now that we're all assembled, we can begin." The lights dimmed as a holographic display materialized in the center of the table. It showed a 3-dimensional representation of an asteroid field, with various structures scattered throughout. "The scenario is as follows." Veltar began. A civilian research station has been attacked by raiders and is under siege. The station contains 300 non-combatant personnel, including children. Your mission is to work together to neutralize the raider threat and evacuate the civilians. Sarah studied the display intently, noting the positions of the raider ships, the layout of the station, and the potential escape routes. It was the kind of complex scenario that required careful coordination between multiple teams with different strengths. Each team will be responsible for a different aspect of the mission. Beltar continued. The Korthak will lead the direct assault on the raider positions. The Vexani will handle long-range support and tactical coordination. The Siege Guard will secure the evacuation routes. And the humans, he paused, glancing at Sarah, the humans will handle special operations and close-quarters combat. War Chief Brutax let out a sound that might have been laughter. Special operations? Are you certain the decorated human is up for such a task? High Mystic Zelena spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species. Perhaps we should not judge based on appearance alone, War Chief. Appearance tells us everything we need to know, Brutax replied. Look at her arms, covered in decorative markings like a pleasure seeker. Where are her battle scars? Where is the proof of her victories? Sarah remained silent throughout this exchange, her expression carefully neutral. She'd learned long ago that there was no point in trying to explain human customs to those who weren't interested in understanding. The exercise will commence at 1400 hours, Velta announced. You have 6 hours to prepare your teams and review the scenario. Dismissed. As the other team leaders filed out of the room, Sarah lingered for a moment, studying the holographic display. The scenario was more complex than Veltar had indicated. The raider positions were well fortified. The civilian population was scattered throughout the station, and the window for evacuation was narrow. It was exactly the kind of mission that human special operations forces had been designed for. Walking back to her quarters, Sarah passed through the station's recreation area, where off-duty personnel from various species mingled and socialized. She noticed several groups of aliens pointing in her direction, their conversations too quiet for her universal translator to pick up, but their body language clearly indicating amusement. Let them look, she thought. Let them assume. In 6 hours, assumptions would meet reality. And reality, as humanity had learned over centuries of warfare, was rarely what anyone expected. The human section of Harmony Prime was smaller than the areas allocated to the other species, reflecting humanity's junior status in the galactic community. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in efficiency. Sarah's team had assembled in Briefing Room Delta, a cramped space that felt more like a closet compared to the grand conference chambers the aliens used. Ensign Parker sat at attention, his datapad ready to record every detail of their planning session. Beside him was Chief Warrant Officer Elena Vasquez, a demolitions expert whose quiet demeanor masked a mind that thought in terms of explosive yields and structural weak points. Across the table, Staff Sergeant Marcus Tank Williams represented their heavy weapons specialist, his massive frame somehow managing to fit into the station's standard furniture. The fourth member of their team had arrived that morning on a classified transport. Senior Chief Petty Officer David Kim was officially listed as a technical specialist, but Sarah knew better. Kim was what the Navy euphemistically called a problem solver, the kind of operator who could infiltrate a fortified position, neutralize threats, and extract intelligence without leaving a trace. All right, people, Sarah began, activating the holographic display that showed their assigned target area. Here's what we're dealing with. The display showed a section of the research station where the raiders had established their strongest defensive position. It was a maze of corridors and chambers that provided excellent cover for defenders, but made any assault extremely dangerous. The other teams are handling the big picture, Sarah continued. The Korthak will draw attention with a frontal assault. The Vexani will provide overwatch and coordinate the overall attack. The Siege Guard will secure our escape routes. But our job is to get inside this complex and neutralize the Raider Command Center. Chief Vasquez studied the layout with professional interest. Lots of choke points. They'll have overlapping fields of fire throughout these corridors. Standard breach and clear tactics are going to be costly. Staff Sergeant Williams nodded agreement. And if there are civilians mixed in with the hostiles, we can't just blast our way through. Sarah smiled slightly. This was why she loved working with experienced operators. They immediately grasped the complexities of the situation. That's exactly right, which is why we're not going in the front door. She manipulated the display, highlighting a series of maintenance shafts and utility conduits. Kim, what do you see? Senior Chief Kim leaned forward, his trained eye picking out details that others might miss. Ventilation system connects to the main complex here, here, and here. Engineering spaces run underneath the entire section. If we can access the utility corridors, we can bypass most of their defensive positions. Exactly. But it gets better. Sarah zoomed in on one particular area of the complex. According to the station blueprints, the Raider Command Center is located here, in what used to be the research station's primary lab. It's isolated from the rest of their defensive network. Ensign Parker looked up from his datapad. Ma'am, the other team leaders didn't seem particularly interested in coordination. How do we make sure our assault is properly timed with their operations? It was a good question, and one that highlighted the central challenge of the exercise. Each species was accustomed to operating independently, following their own tactical doctrines and cultural approaches to warfare. We adapt, Sarah said simply. Parker, I want you monitoring all communication channels, not just our assigned frequencies, but everything. I want to know what the other teams are doing in real time. Yes, ma'am. Should I try to establish direct communication links with the other team leaders? Sarah considered this for a moment. Negative. Let them stick to their own protocols for now. We'll work around them. Chief Vasquez had been studying the technical specifications of the research station. Commander, these utility spaces weren't designed for combat movement. We're going to be operating in confined spaces with limited visibility and no room for maneuver. Which is exactly why the Raiders won't expect us to use them, Senior Chief Kim pointed out. They're thinking like conventional forces. Establish defensive positions, control the obvious approaches, force attackers to come through prepared kill zones. There's CRI. Right, but we're not conventional forces. Sarah looked around the table at her team. We're going to use speed, stealth, and the element of surprise. Get in fast, hit them where they're weakest, and complete the objective before they can react. Staff Sergeant Williams cracked his knuckles, a sound like small branches breaking. What's our equipment loadout for this little adventure? Light and fast. Personal weapons only, minimal armor, maximum mobility. Chief Vasquez, I want you to pack for precision work. No heavy demolitions that might compromise the station's structural integrity. Understood, Commander. Shape charges for specific targets, flashbangs for crowd control, and maybe a few surprises for any electronic systems we encounter. Kim, you'll take point once we're inside the complex. Your job is navigation and threat assessment. If we run into anything unexpected, you're our early warning system. Roger that. I'll also prep some electronic countermeasures in case they have any nasty surprises waiting for us. Sarah turned to the youngest member of their team. Parker, you're our lifeline to the outside world. I want constant updates on the tactical situation, and if things go sideways, you coordinate our extraction. Yes, ma'am. Should I prepare backup communication protocols in case our primary systems are compromised? Good thinking. Always plan for Murphy's Law. Sarah stood up, signaling the end of their planning session. All right, people. Gear up and meet at Docking Bay 7 in 30 minutes. We'll use the exercise prep time to run through our insertion route and verify our equipment. As the team filed out to prepare for the mission, Sarah remained in the briefing room for a moment, staring at the holographic display. The exercise scenario was more challenging than it appeared on the surface, and she suspected that was intentional. Someone wanted to see how the different species would handle complex coordination under pressure. The comm unit chimed softly, indicating an incoming message. Sarah activated it to find Administrator Veltar's face on the screen. Commander Martinez, I hope your team preparation is proceeding smoothly. Very smoothly, thank you, Administrator. Excellent. I wanted to inform you that we've had several requests from station personnel to observe the exercise. There seems to be considerable interest in seeing how human special operations forces perform. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Requests from whom, specifically? Various department heads, off-duty personnel from the other delegations, some of our civilian contractors. Word has spread about your distinctive appearance, and there's curiosity about human military capabilities. In other words, Sarah thought, they want to see the decorated human fail spectacularly. I have no objection to observers, Administrator, as long as they don't interfere with the exercise.
Of course not.
The observation will be conducted remotely, through the exercise monitoring system. No one will be in any danger. After the call ended, Sarah made her way to Docking Bay 7, where her team was already assembled and conducting final equipment checks. The familiar ritual of pre-mission preparation helped focus her mind on the task ahead. Communications check, she called out. Parker, good copy. Vasquez, 5x5. Williams, loud and clear. Kim, reading you. Weapons check. Each team member reported their personal armament. Compact assault rifles designed for close-quarters work, sidearms, and various specialized equipment based on their roles. Final briefing, Sarah announced. Our insertion point is here. She projected a small hologram showing their target area. We access the utility corridors through Maintenance Hatch Alpha 7. Proceed through the ventilation system to reach the command center, neutralize the hostile forces, and extract the same way we came in. Rules of engagement? Staff Sergeant Williams asked. Exercise rounds only, obviously, but treated as a live-fire scenario. Safety's on until we're in the target area. Remember, there may be simulated civilians mixed in with the hostiles, so positive identification before engaging. Timeline? Chief Vasquez inquired. The other teams commence their operations at 1400 hours. We insert 10 minutes later, when their initial assault draws attention away from our infiltration route. Mission duration should be 30 minutes or less if everything goes according to plan. Senior Chief Kim chuckled softly. When does anything ever go according to plan? Which is why we have backup plans, Sarah replied. And backup plans for our backup plans. Ensign Parker had been monitoring the communication channels assigned to the other teams. Commander, the Korthak are discussing their assault strategy. It sounds like they're planning a direct frontal attack with maximum force. Typical, muttered Chief Vasquez. Subtlety isn't exactly their strong suit. What about the Vexani? Sarah asked. Harder to interpret, ma'am. Their communication style is very different from ours. Lots of references to mathematical concepts and energy patterns. But it sounds like they're setting up long-range support positions. And the siege guard? They're focused on defensive preparations. Establishing fallback positions and evacuation routes for the civilians. Sarah nodded. It was about what she had expected. Each species was approaching the exercise according to their own cultural and tactical preferences. The Korthak would charge in with overwhelming force. The Vizani would provide precise, calculated support. The siege guard would build impregnable defensive positions. And the humans would do what humans did best: adapt, improvise, and find solutions that nobody else had thought of. All right, people, let's move out. The team made their way through the station's corridors toward the exercise area. As they walked, Sarah noticed the stares from other species, the whispered conversations that stopped when they passed. The poorly concealed amusement at the sight of the decorated human leading her small team. Let them watch, she thought. In less than an hour, they were going to learn something about humanity that no amount of cultural briefings could teach them. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponents were the ones who didn't look dangerous at all. The exercise area had been configured to simulate the research station under attack. Automated systems had transformed sections of Harmony Prime into a realistic battlefield, complete with simulated damage, emergency lighting, and the kind of chaotic environment that real rescues demanded. Sarah's team took position at their designated starting point, a maintenance access point that would serve as their insertion route. Around them, they could hear the sounds of the other teams preparing for their operations. The heavy footsteps of Korthak warriors, the whispered communications of Vexani mystics, the methodical preparations of siege guard engineers. Exercise control to all teams, announced a voice over the communication system. Exercise commences in 60 seconds. All teams acknowledge. Korthak assault team ready. Vexani support element ready. Siege guard evacuation team ready. Human special operations team ready. Sarah checked her chronometer and looked at her team. They were ready. They'd trained for missions like this hundreds of times, in environments ranging from space stations to planetary surfaces to the depths of alien cities. Exercise control to all teams. Exercise is now live. Begin operations. In the distance, Sarah could hear the thunderous roar of Korthak battle cries as they launched their assault. The station speakers crackled with simulated weapons fire and explosions. The exercise had begun. All right, people, Sarah said quietly. Time to show them what humans can do. The maintenance hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing the dark confines of the utility corridor beyond. Sarah activated her helmet's low-light vision and slipped inside, moving with the fluid grace that came from years of similar infiltrations. Behind her, the rest of her team followed in precise formation, each operator maintaining visual contact with their teammates while staying alert for potential threats. Parker comms check, Sarah whispered into her throat microphone. All channels clear, Commander. The Korthak assault is drawing most of the attention. I'm reading heavy simulated weapons fire from sectors 7 through 12. The utility corridor was barely wide enough for a single person to move through comfortably, with pipes and conduits running along the walls and ceiling. It was exactly the kind of environment that most military forces avoided. But for human special operations, it was just another day at the office. Kim, how's our route looking? Senior Chief Kim consulted his handheld scanner, checking their position against the station blueprints. Clear for the next 100 meters, Commander. Then we transitioned to the ventilation system for the final approach. The team moved through the cramped space with practiced efficiency, their movements silent despite the confined conditions. Sarah had trained with operators from dozens of different worlds, but she'd never worked with anyone who could match human special forces when it came to this kind of precise, close-quarters movement. Behind them, the sounds of the exercise continued to echo through the station. The Korthak assault was proceeding exactly as expected, massive, loud, and designed to draw maximum attention. It was an effective strategy, but it also meant that anyone with intelligence would know exactly where the main attack was coming from. Vasquez, what's your take on the simulated defenses? Chief Vasquez had been monitoring the exercise's automated systems, tracking the location and behavior of the simulated raiders. They're responding predictably, Commander. Heavy concentration of forces at the main choke points, overlapping fields of fire at the primary approaches. Classic defensive doctrine. Which means they're not watching the back door, Staff Sergeant Williams observed. Exactly. Kim, how much further to the transition point? 50 meters, Commander. The access hatch should be coming up on your right. Sarah spotted the maintenance panel that would give them access to the station's ventilation system. It was designed for automated cleaning systems, not human infiltration, but human engineers had long ago learned to see opportunity where others saw obstacles. Hold position, she whispered, examining the hatch mechanism. Standard magnetic locks, electronic sensors to detect unauthorized access, and probably an alarm system that would alert station security if it was opened improperly. That's what the sensors were designed to detect anyway. They weren't programmed to notice when Senior Chief Kim produced a small device that looked like a standard maintenance tool, but was actually a sophisticated electronic warfare system. Give me 30 seconds, Kim whispered, attaching his device to the hatch control panel. 27 seconds later, the hatch opened silently, its sensors convinced that an authorized maintenance cycle was beginning. Beautiful work, Sarah murmured, slipping through the opening into the ventilation shaft beyond. The shaft was larger than the utility corridor, but not by much. It was designed to allow air circulation throughout the station, with periodic access points for cleaning and maintenance. For Sarah's team, it was a highway that bypassed every single defensive position the simulated raiders had established. Parker, status report on the other teams? The Korthak have engaged the main defensive positions and are making steady progress. Casualties are high, but they're advancing. The Vexani are providing long-range support with simulated energy weapons. Very accurate, very effective. The Siege Guard has established their evacuation routes and are beginning to extract simulated civilians. Any change in raider disposition? Negative, Commander. They're still concentrated on defending against the main assault. Perfect, Sarah thought. The exercise designers had created an intelligent AI system to control the raiders, but even artificial intelligence could fall victim to tunnel vision when faced with an obvious threat. The team crawled through the ventilation system for another 10 minutes, following a route that Kim had memorized from the station blueprints. The shaft branched and twisted, providing access to different sections of the station, but Kim navigated through the maze with the confidence of someone who had spent years learning to think in 3 dimensions. Target area coming up, he whispered. Access hatch should be directly above the Raider Command Center. Sarah peered through the ventilation grate and into the chamber below. The exercise designers had done an impressive job of creating a realistic command center, complete with holographic displays, communication equipment, and a handful of simulated raiders coordinating the defense. More importantly, she could see 2 figures in the corner of the room who were obviously meant to represent civilian hostages. The exercise scenario had just become significantly more complex. Vasquez, I need that grate removed without alerting anyone below. Chief Vasquez produced a small cutting tool that could slice through metal without generating heat, noise, or sparks. It was the kind of specialized equipment that most military forces didn't even know existed, but that human special operations considered standard issue. 30 seconds, she whispered. While Vasquez worked on the grate, Sarah studied the layout of the command center. 4 simulated raiders, 2 hostages, multiple computer terminals that probably needed to be secured intact. It was a classic close-quarters scenario, the kind that required split-second timing and absolute precision. Williams, you and Kim take the left side. Vasquez and I will take the right. Parker, you monitor communications and watch our backs. The grate came free silently, leaving an opening just large enough for a person to drop through. Sarah went first, rappelling down a lightweight cord into the command center with her weapon ready. The exercise AI controlling the raiders was sophisticated, but it wasn't designed to deal with threats appearing from impossible directions. By the time the simulated hostiles realized they were under attack, Sarah's team had already secured the room. Clear left, Kim reported. Clear right, Vasquez confirmed. Hostages secure, Williams added. Command center secured, Sarah announced over the communication channel. All simulated raiders neutralized, civilian hostages safe, intelligence computers intact. The response from exercise control was immediate. Human team, confirm your location. Our sensors show the command center is still under raider control. Sarah smiled slightly. Negative control. Recommend you run a detailed sensor sweep. There was a pause, followed by what sounded like frantic activity in the background. Finally, human team. Exercise control confirms command center has been secured. How did you... Never mind. Outstanding work. Parker, what's the status of the other teams? Ensign Parker had been monitoring all communication channels throughout their infiltration. The Korthak assault is still ongoing. They've broken through the outer defensive perimeter, but are taking heavy casualties in the inner corridors. The Vexani are providing effective support, but they're limited by their range and firing positions. The Siege Guard has successfully evacuated about 60% of the civilians. Time to mission completion? We're at 18 minutes from insertion, Commander. Sarah looked around the secured command center. According to the exercise parameters, their primary objective was complete, but she could hear the sounds of continued fighting echoing through the station, and she knew that the other teams were still struggling with their assigned tasks. Williams, what's our ammunition status?
Full load, minus the rounds we used to secure this position.
Maybe 30 seconds of sustained fire. Equipment status? All systems green. Vasquez reported. Kim, ready for whatever comes next. Sarah made a decision that would have surprised the alien observers who thought humans were only capable of following orders. Parker, patch me through to the other team leaders. Commander, that's not part of our assigned mission parameters. Do it anyway. A moment later, Sarah heard the voices of the other team leaders over her communication system. War Chief Brutax was roaring orders at his warriors, his frustration obvious as they struggled against well-prepared defensive positions. High Mystic Zelena was providing tactical updates in her melodic voice, but her team was limited by their positioning and couldn't provide direct support where it was needed most. Colonel Rexstar was coordinating the evacuation effort, but his forces were stretched thin trying to cover multiple escape routes. All team leaders, this is Commander Martinez. I have a tactical update that might interest you. Human, Brutex growled. This is not the time for conversation. My warriors are engaged in serious combat, which is exactly why you need to hear this. We've secured the Raider Command Center and accessed their tactical network. I can see their entire defensive layout. There was a moment of silence, followed by High Mystic Zelena's voice. You have penetrated their command structure. How is this possible? Long story. Here's what matters. They have a secondary command post in Section C7 that's coordinating reinforcements to your position, War Chief. If you can punch through to Corridor 15 Alpha, you'll find a route that bypasses their main kill zones. This intelligence is confirmed, Brutax demanded. Confirmed. Vasquez, transmit the tactical data to all teams. Chief Vasquez interfaced her equipment with the captured Raider computers, extracting detailed information about defensive positions, patrol routes, and weak points in their coverage. Colonel Rexstar, I'm showing 3 evacuation routes that the Raiders haven't detected. If you redirect your forces to access points Delta, 4, Gamma, 7, and Beta, 1-2, you can extract the remaining civilians without coming under fire. This data is reliable. Rexstar's voice carried the cautious tone of someone who had learned not to trust information that seemed too good to be true. Verified through multiple sources. High Mystic, if you can reposition your support teams to coordinates I'm transmitting now, you'll have clear lines of sight to the Raider reinforcement routes. You can cut them off before they reach the main defensive positions. The next 20 minutes transformed the exercise from a grinding battle of attrition into a precisely coordinated operation. The Korthak assault broke through the Raider defenses with minimal casualties, following routes that avoided prepared kill zones. The Vexani support teams provided devastating accurate fire against targets that couldn't see them coming. The Siege Guard evacuated the remaining civilians through routes that the Raiders never knew existed. When the exercise officially ended, the statistics were impressive. 97% of civilians successfully evacuated, 83% of Raider forces neutralized, and total casualties across all Allied teams reduced by 60% compared to pre-exercise projections. Exercise control to all teams. Stand down. Exercise concluded. All team leaders report to Conference Room Alpha for debrief in 30 minutes. As Sarah's team made their way back through the station's corridors, they passed groups of aliens who watched them with expressions that were very different from the amusement they had shown earlier. Word of the exercise results was spreading quickly, and with it came a growing awareness that human capabilities had been significantly underestimated.
Commander, Ensign Parker said quietly as they walked.
The other team leaders are requesting copies of our tactical analysis. They want to understand how we identified the infiltration route and accessed the command center. Tell them we'll cover it in the debrief, Sarah replied. Should I mention the specialized equipment we used? Sarah considered this. Human special operations technology was significantly more advanced than most aliens realized, representing decades of innovation driven by necessity. Humans had been fighting wars in environments that other species avoided, developing solutions to problems that other militaries never encountered. Give them the tactical overview, but keep the technical details general. Some capabilities are better demonstrated than explained. As they approached their quarters, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in a viewport. Her arms were still covered in ink, the colorful artwork that had drawn so much attention when she arrived. But now she wondered if the aliens might be seeing it differently. They were about to find out. The debrief session would either be a routine after-action review, or it would be the moment when humanity's role in the galactic community changed forever. Either way, Sarah thought as she prepared for the meeting. It was going to be interesting. Conference Room Alpha was packed when Sarah arrived for the debrief. Word of the exercise results had spread throughout Harmony Prime, and what had been scheduled as a routine after-action review had transformed into something resembling a formal presentation. Representatives from dozens of species filled the observation gallery, their conversations creating a low buzz of anticipation that fell silent when she entered the room. War Chief Brutax was already seated at the main table, his massive frame somehow managing to look diminished. The proud Korthak warrior who had mocked the decorated human 12 hours earlier now studied Sarah with obvious respect, though his cultural pride prevented him from expressing it directly. High Mystic Zelena sat in graceful contemplation, her large eyes tracking Sarah's movement across the room. The Vexani had always been the most intellectually curious of the galactic powers, and Sarah could sense that she was trying to reconcile what she had witnessed with her previous assumptions about human capabilities. Colonel Rexstar of the Siege Guard had brought a datapad covered with notes and calculations. His people were methodical by nature, and he had clearly spent the last hour analyzing every aspect of the human team's performance, trying to understand how they had achieved results that conventional tactics suggested should have been impossible. Administrator Veltar called the meeting to order with obvious satisfaction. The exercise had exceeded all expectations, providing exactly the kind of data that the Galactic Council needed to evaluate humanity's potential as a military partner. Before we begin the formal debrief, Veltar announced, I want to congratulate all teams on an outstanding performance. The exercise objectives were achieved with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. However, I think we all agree that the most surprising element was the performance of the Human Special Operations team. Sarah felt the weight of every eye in the room focusing on her. In the observation gallery, she could see aliens from species she didn't even recognize, all of them trying to understand how a small team of humans had accomplished what larger, more heavily armed forces had struggled with. Commander Martinez's, Veltar continued, would you care to explain your tactical approach? Sarah stood and activated the holographic display system. The three-dimensional representation of the research station materialized in the center of the table, showing the positions of all teams during the exercise. Our approach was based on three fundamental principles, she began. First, we identified that the exercise scenario favored unconventional tactics over direct confrontation. Second, we utilized human technical capabilities to access areas that conventional forces couldn't reach. Third, we shared tactical intelligence with all teams to maximize overall effectiveness. War Chief Brutax leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling through the room. Your infiltration route was impossible. No warrior could move through those spaces while carrying proper equipment. That's exactly what the radar AI calculated, Sarah replied. But human special operations forces have been fighting in confined spaces for centuries. We've developed equipment, tactics, and training specifically for environments that other militaries avoid. She manipulated the display to show their infiltration route through the utility corridors and ventilation system. Our equipment is designed for maximum capability in minimum space. Our operators are trained to think three-dimensionally and exploit any available avenue of approach. High Mystic Zelana spoke for the first time since the exercise ended. Your technical capabilities are unexpected. The electronic countermeasures, the silent cutting tools, the real-time intelligence analysis. These are not capabilities we associated with human military forces. Humans have been fighting wars against superior numbers and firepower for our entire recorded history, Sarah explained. We've learned to use intelligence, technology, and unconventional tactics to level the playing field. Colonel Rexstar consulted his datapad. The timing of your intelligence sharing was crucial to the overall success of the exercise. How did you make the tactical decision to exceed your assigned mission parameters? It was a pointed question. Sarah had technically violated the exercise rules by coordinating with other teams beyond her assigned role, and everyone in the room knew it. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and mission success over rigid adherence to predetermined plans, Sarah said carefully. When we identified information that could save lives and accomplish the overall objective more effectively, sharing that intelligence was the tactically sound decision. Even though it was outside your assigned mission parameters? Administrator Veltar asked, especially because it was outside our assigned mission parameters.
The room fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in.
Most galactic military forces operated according to strict hierarchical structures where exceeding assigned roles was considered insubordination. But human forces had learned that battlefield conditions rarely matched planning assumptions, and success often depended on operators making decisions based on real-time information rather than predetermined orders. This tactical flexibility, High Mystic Zelana mused, is this common among human forces? It's fundamental to how we operate. Every human soldier is trained to think independently, to assess changing conditions, and to adapt their tactics accordingly. We call it mission-type orders. You're given an objective and the resources to achieve it, but how you accomplish the mission is up to you. War Chief Brutex had been studying the tactical display throughout this exchange, his warrior's eye picking out details that others might miss. Your equipment, these specialized tools you used, they are standard for human forces? For special operations units, yes. But the principles behind them are applied throughout our military structure. Humans have always had to do more with less, so we've become very good at developing technologies that multiply individual effectiveness. Sarah paused, looking around the room at the assembled aliens. This was the moment when she could either stick to the safe, diplomatic answers that everyone expected, or she could tell them something that might change how they saw humanity forever. She made her choice. There's something else you should understand about human military culture, she said, her voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. Something that goes beyond tactics and technology. She turned to face War Chief Brutex directly. You mentioned earlier that I have no battle scars, no visible proof of my victories. You're right, but you're also wrong. Sarah rolled up her sleeves, revealing the artwork that covered her arms in full detail. What had seemed like random decoration from a distance resolved into specific, carefully crafted images when seen up close. Every piece of ink on my arms represents someone who didn't make it home, she said quietly. This eagle is for Lieutenant Dave Thompson, who held a position on Kepler 442b so his squad could escape. This compass rose is for Specialist Maria Santos, who guided our ship through an asteroid field with a failing navigation system. This anchor is for Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez, who went down with his ship to buy time for an evacuation convoy. The room had become completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed muted. This is how humans honor our war dead, Sarah continued. We don't display our victories on our skin. We carry our losses. Every mission, every battle, every moment of risk. We carry the memory of those who fell, so that others could live. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every alien present. You see ink. We see memorials. You see decoration. We see dedication. You see vanity. We see the promise that no sacrifice will ever be forgotten. High Mystic Zelana rose from her seat, her ethereal features showing an expression that Sarah had never seen on a Vexani before. It took her a moment to recognize it. Reverence. Commander Martinez, Zelana said, her musical voice carrying clearly through the silent room. Among my people, we etch our achievements into our bones so that they become part of us forever. But to carry the memory of the fallen, this is a greater honor than any achievement. War Chief Brutex stood as well, his massive frame towering over the conference table. For a moment, Sarah thought he was going to object to her explanation, to insist that visible battle scars were the only true measure of a warrior's worth. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He removed his ceremonial war harness, revealing the network of scars that covered his torso. But unlike the ritual scarification that most Korthak displayed, these wounds told a different story. They were the result of real combat, real losses, real sacrifices. This scar, he said, pointing to a particularly prominent mark across his chest, was earned when I failed to save my battle brother during the siege of Korthak Prime. This one, he indicated another, when I was too slow to prevent an ambush that cost 3 good warriors their lives. He looked directly at Sarah. I have carried these marks as reminders of my failures, but you carry your losses as honors. This is a warrior's true strength. Colonel Rexstar had remained seated throughout this exchange, but Sarah could see that he was studying her arms with new understanding. The siege guard valued defensive capabilities above all else, but they also understood the cost of protecting others. Commander, he said quietly, among my people, we build monuments to remember those who fall in defense of others. But to carry that memorial with you always, this shows a dedication that we had not recognized. Administrator Veltar had been taking notes throughout the debrief, but now he set his datapad aside and addressed the rune directly. I think it's clear that this exercise has revealed capabilities and cultural aspects that were not anticipated in our preliminary assessments, he announced. The human military represents a significantly different approach to warfare than we have encountered among other galactic civilizations. He turned to Sarah. Commander Martinez, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our appreciation for the demonstration of human tactical capabilities. But more importantly, I want to acknowledge the cultural insight you have shared with us today. Sarah nodded respectfully. Thank you, Administrator. But I think there's one more thing that needs to be said. She gestured to her team, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room throughout the debrief. Everything we accomplished today was the result of human teamwork, training, and technology. But it was also the result of something else. The knowledge that we fight not just for victory, but for the people who depend on us. Every human soldier carries that responsibility, she continued. Whether they have ink or not, whether they've seen combat or not, whether they're special operations or support personnel, we fight so that others don't have to. We take risks so that others can be safe. We accept loss so that others can live. That's what you saw in this exercise. Not just tactical innovation or advanced technology, but a military culture built around the idea that some things are worth any sacrifice. Ensign Parker stepped forward from the group. Commander, if I may? Sarah nodded, and the young officer addressed the room with the confidence of someone who had found his voice. My brother died on Tau Ceti, Parker said simply. His squad leader carries his initials on her wrist, not because it's required, not because it's regulation, but because she made a promise that he would never be forgotten. That's why we're here, he continued. Not to prove how tough we are or how advanced our technology is, but to honor the sacrifice of everyone who came before us, and to make sure their deaths meant something. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah could see alien faces throughout the room, showing expressions she had never witnessed before. Understanding, respect, and something that might have been admiration. Finally, War Chief Brutax broke the silence. Commander Martinez, he said formally, I request permission to learn more about human military customs. Granted, War Chief. High Mystic Zelena. The Vixani Collective would be honored to exchange tactical and cultural knowledge with human forces. Colonel Rexstar, the Siege Guard sees potential for beneficial cooperation with human special operations capabilities. Administrator Veltar stood and addressed the room one final time. I believe this concludes our exercise debrief. However, I suspect this is the beginning of a much longer conversation about humanity's role in galactic military cooperation. As the formal session ended, and the aliens began to file out of the room, many of them approached Sarah directly. They wanted to hear more about human military culture, to understand the technology they had witnessed, to explore possibilities for future cooperation. But the moment that meant the most to Sarah came as she was preparing to leave the conference room. War Chief Brutax approached her quietly, away from the crowd of observers. Commander, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. I owe you an apology. I judged based on appearance without understanding meaning. No apology necessary, War Chief. First impressions are natural. No, Brutax insisted. Among my people, we say that a warrior's true strength is revealed not in victory, but in how they honor the fallen. Today you showed me that humans understand this truth better than any species I have encountered. He paused, seeming to wrestle with words that didn't come easily to a warrior accustomed to simple, direct speech. "I would be honored to fight alongside humans in the future," he said finally. "And I would be proud to learn from your example." As Sarah walked back through the station's corridors, she noticed that the stares she received were very different from those she had encountered upon arrival. The aliens she passed looked at her with obvious respect, some nodding acknowledgement, others stopping their conversations entirely as she went by. Word of the exercise results and the subsequent debrief had spread throughout Harmony Prime with the speed that only truly significant news could achieve. Everyone knew that something important had happened, that humanity had revealed capabilities and cultural depth that none of the galactic powers had anticipated. But for Sarah, the most meaningful moment came when she passed a group of young alien military officers who were engaged in animated discussion about human tactical innovations. As she walked by, one of them noticed her approach and quickly said something to his companions. They all turned to watch her pass, and as one, they came to attention and saluted. It was a gesture of respect that transcended species, culture, and military tradition. A recognition that went beyond tactics and technology to acknowledge something more fundamental, the warrior's code that honored sacrifice above victory and dedication above decoration. Sarah returned the salute and continued on her way, knowing that humanity's place in the galactic community had just changed forever. The aliens had learned to see past the ink. Now they understood what it truly represented. 6 months after the exercise at Harmony Prime, Commander Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earth starship Defiant, watching as the combined fleet took formation around her. The sight still amazed her, even though she had witnessed similar assemblies dozens of times since that day when everything changed. To her port side, 3 Korthak heavy cruisers maintained perfect formation, their hulls bristling with the kind of weaponry that could level a city. War Chief Brutax commanded the lead ship personally, and his warriors had requested to serve alongside human forces in every major operation since Harmony Prime. Above her position, a squadron of Vexani-like cruisers moved with the graceful precision that characterized everything their species did. High Mystic Zalana had become one of humanity's strongest advocates in the Galactic Council, arguing that human tactical innovations represented a paradigm shift in military thinking that all species needed to understand. Below the formation, the massive bulk carriers of the Siege Guard provided logistics and defensive support, their crews having learned to appreciate human special operations techniques for protecting civilian populations during military operations. And scattered throughout the fleet were ships from a dozen other species, each one representing a civilization that had requested to work with human forces after hearing about the events at Harmony Prime. "Commander," Ensign Parker's voice interrupted her thoughts. He had been promoted twice since the exercise and now served as the Defiant's primary communications officer. Incoming transmission from Fleet Command. On screen, the image that materialized showed Admiral Chen, the officer responsible for coordinating all joint operations between human and alien forces. Behind her, Sarah could see the busy activity of Fleet Headquarters, where humans and aliens worked side by side planning operations that would have been impossible before Harmony Prime. "Sarah, good to see you. How's the fleet shakedown going?" "Smoothly, Admiral. Integration protocols are working better than expected. The Korthak are adapting well to combined tactics, and the Vexani long-range coordination is proving invaluable." "Outstanding. I have some news that I think you'll find interesting. The Galactic Council has formally approved the establishment of the Integrated Special Operations Command. Guess who they want to head it up?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me it's someone with more political experience than me." Admiral Chen laughed. "Sorry, but they specifically requested you. Apparently every species that's worked with human forces has insisted that you're the only officer they trust to coordinate joint special operations." "Admiral, I'm not sure I'm qualified to..." "Sarah, you revolutionized galactic military thinking in the span of a single exercise. You've proven that humans can work effectively with any species when given the chance. And more importantly, you've shown them that military excellence isn't about individual glory, but about honoring sacrifice and protecting others." Sarah glanced around the bridge, where her mixed crew of humans and aliens was working together with the kind of seamless coordination that would have been unthinkable a year ago.
What would the assignment involve? Coordinating special operations across all galactic powers.
Training exchange programs, joint mission planning. Essentially, you'd be building the kind of military cooperation that we've always dreamed about but never thought possible. Before Sarah could respond, another voice interrupted the conversation. "Commander Martinez to the observation deck. Commander Martinez to the observation deck." "Hold that thought, Admiral. I need to see what this is about." Sarah made her way through the ship's corridors, noting how naturally the mixed crew worked together. Human efficiency, Korthak strength, Vexani precision, and Siegeguard reliability had combined to create something more effective than any single species could achieve alone. The observation deck was packed when she arrived. Her senior staff was assembled along with representatives from each of the alien ships in the fleet. At the center of the group stood Senior Chief Kim, holding a small device that Sarah recognized as a ceremonial presentation box. "Commander," Kim said formally, "the crews of the combined fleet have asked me to present you with something." He opened the box to reveal a medal unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It was crafted from metals native to a dozen different worlds, designed in a style that incorporated artistic elements from every major galactic civilization. But what made it truly unique was the inscription, written in the ancient script that served as the universal language of military honor among all spacefaring species. "For Sarah Martinez," Kim read aloud, "who taught the galaxy that the greatest strength lies not in the scars we bear, but in the memories we carry." Sarah took the medal with hands that weren't entirely steady. The weight of it seemed to represent more than just metal and craftsmanship. It represented a fundamental change in how the galaxy viewed humanity and how humanity saw its place among the stars. "There's more," Kim continued. "The alien crews have also requested permission to adopt a human custom." "Which custom would that be, Senior Chief?" "They want to honor their own fallen with memorial artwork. Each species has developed their own variation, but they all want to carry the memory of their losses forward into future battles." Sarah looked around the observation deck and saw something she had never expected to witness. Korthak warriors were displaying small ink markings alongside their traditional scars. Vexani mystics had incorporated memorial elements into their bone etchings. Even the practical siege guard had found ways to honor their fallen that went beyond simple monument building. "Commander," a voice called from the back of the group. Sarah turned to see War Chief Brutax approaching, his massive frame somehow managing to move with dignity in the confined space. "War Chief, I have learned something from humans," he said simply. "Strength is not measured only by victories won, but by sacrifices honored. I would like to share a human custom with my warriors." He extended his arm, revealing a fresh piece of ink that had been carefully applied using techniques learned from human tattoo artists. It was small but beautifully crafted. A simple image of crossed weapons surrounded by text in ancient Korthak script. "This honors my battle brother who fell at Korthak Prime," Brutax explained. "For too long, I carried only the scar of my failure to save him. Now, I also carry the memory of his courage." High Mystic Zelana stepped forward next, her ethereal features showing the kind of deep emotion that Vexani rarely displayed publicly. "Commander Martinez," she said in her musical voice, "your people have taught us that military excellence is not about individual achievement, but about collective dedication to something greater than ourselves. We have incorporated this understanding into our strategic doctrine. Vexani forces now operate with a focus on protecting others rather than simply achieving tactical objectives. The results have been illuminating." Colonel Rexstar approached last, carrying a datapad that displayed fleet-wide statistics. "Human tactical innovations have increased overall mission effectiveness by 43%, he reported in his methodical way. But more importantly, civilian casualty rates in joint operations have decreased by 67%. These numbers represent more than tactical improvement," he continued. "They represent a fundamental shift in how we approach military operations. We fight not just to win, but to protect." Sarah looked around the observation deck at the assembled officers and crew members. Humans and aliens standing together, united by something more powerful than politics or strategic necessity, a shared understanding of what military service truly meant. "Thank you all," she said finally. "But I want you to understand something. What we've accomplished here isn't about human superiority or alien adaptability. It's about recognizing that every species brings something valuable to the table when we're willing to look past surface differences." She gestured to the mixed crew around her. "The Korthak taught us that courage in battle is meaningless without honor in peace. The Vexani showed us that precision and planning can make the impossible possible. The Siege Guard demonstrated that true strength lies in protecting others, not just defeating enemies." "And humans?" asked Ensign Parker. "Humans brought the understanding that our fallen give meaning to our victories and our sacrifices give purpose to our survival." The ceremony concluded with something that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. A joint salute involving every species in the fleet. Each race used their own traditional gesture of respect, but they performed them simultaneously, creating a moment of unity that transcended cultural boundaries. Later, as Sarah stood alone on the observation deck watching the stars, she reflected on how much had changed since that day at Harmony Prime. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, filled with conflicts and threats that required military solutions. But now those solutions were being developed by species working together, sharing knowledge and capabilities in ways that made everyone stronger. Her personal communicator chimed softly, indicating an incoming message from Earth. She activated it to see the familiar face of Master Chief Morrison appearing on the small screen. "Sarah, just heard about your new assignment. Commanding all Joint Special Operations? That's a hell of a promotion. More like a hell of a responsibility, Jazz. I'm going to be coordinating operations across species that were fighting each other just a few years ago. Yeah, but look what you've accomplished already. When you left for Harmony Prime, nobody thought humans would amount to much in galactic military circles. Now we've got alien species asking to serve under human command." Sarah smiled. "It's not about serving under human command, Jazz. It's about serving together. Even better, you know what Chief Kowalski would say if he could see this? What would he say? He'd say that this is what we've been fighting for all along. Not to prove how tough humans are, but to prove that we're worth fighting alongside." After the call ended, Sarah remained on the observation deck, watching as the combined fleet continued its patrol route through space that was safer because of their cooperation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions that would test the bonds between species that had learned to see past their differences. But tonight, she was content to stand watch with the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, former enemies were working together to protect innocent lives. That warriors from a dozen worlds carried the memory of their fallen into battle not as burdens, but as honors. And that a small human woman with memorial ink on her arms had somehow helped teach the galaxy that true strength came not from the scars you displayed, but from the promises you kept. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead, indifferent to the political boundaries and species differences that had once seemed so important. But below them, in the combined fleet that now patrolled the galaxy's most dangerous regions, something new was taking shape. A military tradition that honored sacrifice above victory, protection above conquest, and memory above glory. It was, Sarah reflected, exactly what Chief Kowalski would have wanted, exactly what all the fallen would have wanted. And as she watched the mixed crews working together on ships designed by multiple species for the protection of all, she knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The galaxy had learned to see the memorial in the ink. Now it understood what that memorial truly meant. In the end, that understanding would prove more powerful than any weapon, more enduring than any victory, and more valuable than any conquest. It was the foundation upon which a better future could be built. One sacrifice at a time, one memory at a time, one salute at a time.